Hey everybody, welcome to today's webinar. Super excited to have John Francis on with us today. For those who don't know, John has over 30 years of experience in franchising on the advisor side, the speaker side. He's been a board member. He is the founder of Next Level Franchise. And also he is known famously as Johnny Franchise, if you've heard that name before. And John serves on the advisory board for all kinds of brands across the industry, which is why we asked him to come on today to talk about just that. Advisory boards, what is their purpose? Why do people use them and what do they do for brands? But before we get into all of that, welcome, John.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. Glad to be here and glad to share some ideas with you and your audience. Thank you.
Amazing. So I guess before we dig into it, would love to hear in your own words, kind of a little bit about your background, your story in franchising, and then we'll double click into the advisory stuff.
Sure. No problem. Well, I grew up here. I'm in Twin Cities in Minnesota, Minneapolis area. I'm the youngest of 5 kids in my family, and my parents started a franchise system of hair salons. My dad was a barber, actually cutting hair in the 1950s. And before I was ever, they were just married, and he was trying to find his way, right? So he went to barber school and was a pretty good barber, but he was frustrated. He said, it's going to take me forever to build anything really meaningful, one head at a time. He can only cut hair so fast. And so he was a barber. And in those days, there were barber shops for men and beauty salons for women. So he was a barber and he worked for another barber. And then he wound up, the traditional path was you would become the apprentice, and then you'd become the owner of the shop, and it was a 2-chair shop. And so him and another guy, they're cutting hair, and he's like, this is all there is. There's got to be more. And there really wasn't any more at the time in the industry. And so he was frustrated. So he looked around, and he got busy, and he discovered another guy in California, actually, who had developed a men's salon, which was totally unusual, right? Because there were barbershops and there were beauty salons. And so this guy had created kind of a cross. So he actually went out to California, watched this guy, saw his thing, and came back to Minnesota and said, we're going to do this here. So he created a men's hairstyling is what they called it. The Barbers was the original brand. Not real creative, but I mean, it's what they did and who they were. So it was a long story short, Gary, it was a real stretch. He went from, I think the story goes, at the time they were charging $1.75 for haircuts, right? That's what a haircut was, $1.75. He was going to charge $3.50. And people said, you're crazy. No one is ever going to pay. Why would you give up? You got a great business. Anyway, they went for it. They created a real high-end, private, appointment-based, all the things that we take for granted today. Anyway, it worked. So he opened this upscale barbershop for men, and he recruited great barbers, and they really went all in on high-level service and high quality and exclusive and products and styling and new cutting techniques. And anyway, again, long story short, it worked. He built another one, and another one, and another one. He had 5 barbershops in short order, which was way more than he ever expected. Nobody had 5 barbershops, right, at the time. His managers who were running the 5 barbershops, they came to him, and my dad's name was Joe Francis. They said, Joe, we see what's going on here. We want a piece of the action. And he said, well, hold on. These are my shops. I built these shops. I paid for all this. It's you're helping me, but let me figure it out. So someone said, why don't you franchise? He said, what's that? Right? No one at the time, there were restaurants, gas stations, and hotels. And I think that was about it. There wasn't. No, we're pretty sure he was the first one to franchise a barbershop in that era, right? In the 60s, it would have been 60s. So he made those 5 managers franchisees, and they went off to different, directions around the Minneapolis and Wisconsin and Iowa and, the upper Midwest. And so now he had his 5, the original corporate stores, if you will. And then he had 5 franchisees, each with their own location. So now he had 10 locations, half corporate, half franchise. Well, those franchisees were barbers who had worked with him. So they knew the business, they knew the model. And of course, for, again, a short story, it worked. They worked. So they started attracting more barbers, more people who wanted to see that level of success because no one had really done that. So it worked. And then they went crazy, right? Entrepreneur founder. And he actually took it public. And here in Minneapolis, what they call local over the counter. So they raised $300,000. And this would have been, I think, early 70s, 1970s. So, and he said, I felt like I robbed the bank. I had all this money. And anyway, so they made all the classic mistakes, right? Every my dad was a wild entrepreneur, high work, high integrity, great guy. Everybody loved him. He was a hard worker, driven, like just crazy. So they went on, they grew too fast. They expanded too far. They hired a bunch of barbers to run the business. And of course they were barbers, not business people. They survived, right? All the ups and downs and sideways. And they brought in some real talented people. They brought in marketing people. They brought in finance people. They created a private label product line. So they brought in product people. They brought in the talent. And then they started to really develop the systems, and the franchisees started getting into multiple units, which at that time was totally new. So it worked. They survived, and the brands kept growing in the 70s, and it became sort of a national brand. I remember when they hit 200 stores. That was a big deal. 200 locations, like, wow. And then in the 80s, we developed a brand called Cost Cutters, which was like low price, quick service, no appointment, kind of the other end of the segment, a different segment of the industry. And well, then that was engineered to be a multi-unit model. And it was engineered to be owned and operated by non-technical business owner. So not a barber or a hairdresser, but a business owner, a business person would own a hair salon. Well, who would ever buy a hair salon if you don't cut hair? Well, they created the training and the management and the systems and everything because we had been in business for 15 years already. So that worked. The Cost Cutters brand took off and actually eclipsed the original brand and became a much larger, faster growing, and it was engineered as a multi-unit model, which I think was early in franchising, especially in the salon business. And anyway, that worked, and the franchisees were seeing some tremendous success, so we got a lot of attention. When a brand is working, it's not too hard to let it grow. And again, they made plenty of mistakes, but survived the mistakes. In the later 80s, we developed a new concept called City Looks, which was kind of an upgrade from the old Barbers concept. City Looks was that high-end kind of salon spa concept where they did the hair and hair color and skin and nails and massage and, full service spa salon, upscale salon. So we had that brand, and then the original brand, and then the Cost Cutters brand. Then in the 90s, we did some acquisitions. We rolled up some regional brands, which was a lot of fun. Got to learn how to do that and give those franchisees new choices and new options and training and support like they never had. I got to spend 5 years doing international franchising. We franchised in Europe. We did a master franchise based in Paris who had most of Europe, and that was an awful lot of fun. I went to Moscow in the early 90s and did a joint venture with some Russians that were really Soviets at the time. And that was quite an experience. And again, against all odds, we were successful over there in the later 90s. My dad passed away in 94 from cancer. He had fought cancer for a long time. And my mom stepped up as chairman. They were still majority shareholders. So before my dad passed, and he was fighting a slow cancer. It was an awful, terrible situation, but it gave him time to prepare. And one of the things they did was they built up their board of directors. I mean, really added some real talent to the board of directors. And they recruited outside executives, because my dad, he knew he wasn't going to be around. And my mom, while she had the loyalty and the integrity, she wasn't a business owner, right? So she wanted a board to support her in her role and really to hold the executive team accountable. Well, that worked. So my mom took over and actually doubled the size of the system. In 5 years, we went from 500 to 1,000 stores. It was fantastic. And I was busy doing international. I came back from doing that. I got doing acquisitions and strategic planning, and we had relationship with Walmart. We were putting cost cutters inside of their super centers. I mean, things were just going crazy. The 90s was really good for us. In 97, just a few years after my dad had died, my brother, I had an older brother who was 10 years older. He died in a car accident, which was obviously unexpected. And that was the kind of what upset the apple cart, if you will. My mom kind of disappeared for a while and had to go through, that was awful, terrible for the whole family. It was awful. She came back from that and came to the board meeting and said, look, I'm done. Get me out of here. I want to retire. I've had enough. And the board said, okay, we're not going to try to change your mind. Let's figure out how to do this. So the board came up with a good plan. She was going to sell half of her shares, so she'd still have control. She'd get enough to retire. We were going to do a secondary offering. We filed through the SEC and everything was, it was set up. I had lined up more acquisitions. We were going to keep doing that. We were going to just keep growing and keep the gas on. And it turned into an auction. In 99, we were getting these offers kept coming in. We went with a strategic buyer who paid us a tremendous multiple. We got an 18 times multiple. And this is before private equity was all over franchise. This was very early. So it was enough for us to retire. Everybody retired. My mom retired. The executive team, most of those people retired. I went with the deal. I was 32. So that was my first retirement, I guess. But I wasn't about to retire. Really, I was too young, right? And so I went with the deal to the buyer, and it was a good transaction. I learned a lot. And but at the end of the day, when that was all kind of done and the transition and integration was completed, I didn't feel like I owned it anymore. It wasn't our company. It wasn't my business anymore. So I left, and I got out of there, and I went on and I did 5 more brands on my own as a franchisor, and as a franchisee, and as an area developer and a regional guy or whatever. What I learned, Gary, is the experience I had growing up in my family's franchise system was tremendous. We really did have a good business. Great people, and good success all around. Everybody around it was successful. So that was a good learning experience. And I took that and took it with me and went to go help other people with their brands. And so I'm not much of a startup guy. That's never been my thing. I'm more of a fixer, more of a what's holding you back? Where's the obstacle? Let's solve those problems. So I got involved in a few other brands. Like I said, some as a developer, some as an operator, some as a partner, investor, strategic, or whatever. And I got really good at helping other people fix their franchise systems and grow their systems and scale. The difference between growing a business and scaling a system, because I lived through it. I lived it. So had a lot of fun, I guess. I had some great experiences, and not all wins. I had my share of wins and losses, but I learned from everything. And after the recession came through in 2009 and 10, when all of that chaos was going on, the Great Recession, that stopped franchise growth. Financing froze up solid, and everything pretty well stopped for about a year. And I was in a brand at the time, and I was selling my units. I was an operator. I was building and selling stores in my area here. And I went back to the corporate office and said, look, I don't think I can finance anything. Even if I could sell it, nobody can get any financing. So I think I'm done, right? And they're like, well, okay. I negotiated my way out of I had 5 years left on my development contract, and I was on track. They were happy. We made a fair deal. This was actually at a breakfast at IFA when we negotiated this deal. And they said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, we've got a family. We set up a family office. I was running that. And I said, I'm going to keep track of stuff for I got 3 sisters and my mom and myself. And And they said, well, why don't you come and help us at the corporate level? I said, well, I don't want to be busy. And they said, well, no, how much time do you think you want to give? So anyway, I signed on as a part-time corporate employee. So I went from developer franchisee to the corporate side in that brand and had a great run with them, helped them fix up their brand and position it for sale, which worked out. And I started serving on boards. So I connected with Gordon Logan, the founder at Sport Clips, met him at an IFA conference and started asking questions. And, he's like, who are you? How do you know so much about this industry and my business? And I said, well, I watched you when you were growing. I mean, we had an eye on them and everybody else too, it was in the industry. So anyway, Gordon is a great guy, very capable leader, just a really tremendous founder. And he had a son that was coming into the business at the time, his son, Edward. And I said, well, look, I was the son of the boss who was being groomed to have a leadership role, but we wound up selling the whole company because of my mom and the brother and, that. And so he said, well, maybe you could come and help us. And I said, well, who's on your board? And so I went down to Texas and looked around and met the family, met the team, and it came back with some, I would say, very insightful perspective that he agreed. Yeah, that's pretty interesting stuff. So he put me on his board, that's a board of directors. So that one's a fiduciary board. And that was 15 years ago, maybe more now, 16. Anyway, a long time ago, 2009, I think, to be precise. So I serving on his board and serving as a coach or consultant. And then I guess I realized that my gift is really helping other people see what they missed or see what's wrong with their business. I don't really want to run a business ever again. I mean, in the sense of a day-to-day, you're the leader, you got all these people and you're doing your thing. I don't really want that. I don't really need to do that. I have more fun and more impact by helping other people with their business. And so serving on boards kind of became an evolution of the opportunities that were in front of me and me finding my path of how I can do what I really like to do, what I think I'm good at, in a way that creates value for everybody involved. And so that's a bit of my history. I guess I grew up going to IFA conventions. I grew up the son of two founders that were fantastic. We had a great base to start from. And then I got more and more opportunities, much more experience working with a lot of other brands over the last, probably 15 or 20 years. I've had my hands in probably 50 different brands as a coach, an advisor, a speaker. You'd be shocked at what you can do in a brand speaking to their whole conference all at once, and you can move the needle for the whole brand at one time. And so I get to do that once in a while. Now I serve on, I think, 7 boards, if I count them all. 6, I'll say, are functional. 1 is sort of questionable, but that's okay. These are small, founder-led private companies, not complicated. Sport Clips, I'm still very active there, and they're very capable. They're doing a great job. We went through succession planning there, and that worked out pretty nicely. Again, good people doing hard work, and the results are obvious. That brand is big and stable and enjoying some good results. Other brands I've worked with, smaller brands, but always helping that founder. I say I help the founder become a CEO, right? Because that's really what my mom did. My dad never really embraced the CEO role. He was just too much of an entrepreneur founder. He really didn't care about accountability or budgets and things of that nature. It was just not his thing. But for my mom, it was, she was very willing and capable of growing in that role. So helping her do that and watching that happen and experiencing that firsthand, I think gave me a good basis to help other people do that with their franchise company. So that's kind of where I have been for the last, decade or so. I call myself a freestyle advisor coach. I don't use the word consultant because in franchising, people think I'm selling franchises or matchmaking people to brands. And I don't really do that at all. I'm not interested in that. Other people who are better at that can do that. It's not my thing. But that's where I am, and that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you started this whole thing with this, your dad going out to California to seek advice, right? He went out to learn something from somebody else that was out there in the market that wasn't in his local area. And what I love about that, excuse me, is that nobody's going to understand their customers better than the company itself, whether it be the founder or even the employees. But there's this other added element of when you need to navigate the market or need to navigate something that is new to the company that isn't just servicing their customers, then it starts to make sense to go out to the board or go out to somebody external. So how do you think about the right time to look internally for answers versus look externally for answers to something your company is going through?
Boy, that's a great question, Gary. I would say, it depends on who you have with you, right? You can look internally all you want, and I think that's a good natural place to start. Is who do you know and trust? Who's with you? But I think the outside perspective is tremendously valuable, but you got to be open to it. So I'm an older guy now, right? I used to be the youngest guy in the room for a long time, but not anymore. Now I'm probably the oldest guy in the room. But in the old days, I'd look around and say, well, who's here? What do they know? What can I learn from them? Right. So my dad instilled in me this endless curiosity, what can you learn and who can you learn it from? Doesn't have to be out of a book or a classroom or a video. It can be people. So engaging and building that network and leveraging that network from time to time. So I think the time to go outside is really all the time. I think a good business owner has outside perspective consistently. You don't take all the advice that you get. You don't implement every idea that comes through your head. You have to be thoughtful and careful, but having that outside perspective really opens your range of possibilities and the creativity that comes from it. Sometimes I'll be in a board meeting or doing my thing, and I'll ask a question or trigger an idea that may not be exactly what they needed, but it opened their mind to something else that then was what they needed. Right? So it's like a trigger that opens the thinking to the better solution that they never would have seen. It was right in front of them. So a lot of the work that I do now is I say I like to ask really good questions to get people to really think differently and see themselves and see their business and see their franchise brand through a different lens. And someone told me, it's like you can't read the label on a bottle from inside the bottle. You have to be outside of the bottle to turn the thing and look at the front label, So
I love that.
So I'm that outside objective professional, right? I don't get worked up. I don't get real high. I don't get real low. I'm pretty calm and steady. But I like to challenge in a respectful, constructive kind of way. And it's fantastic. I've done it enough in enough brands long enough where I can see my fingerprints on their success. And that makes me happy. I love to see other people have success, and it's great if I had anything to do with it. But I don't take any credit for it. They do the work. I may show up and ask a bunch of questions and make them think differently and see things, make better choices. But I don't take the credit. It's not my business. I didn't do that. I maybe helped that happen, so I can take some pride in seeing the results. But I like to help other people get where they want to go.
Well, I mean, as a founder, I can agree that advice is everywhere, right? And I think you just share your story. People respond with things that are thought-provoking from their history, or they'll question just, out of curiosity, just as you said. So I guess the next question on my end is, every founder is getting advice. Every founder is, especially at IFA, brushing up against other founders, people that have been on this journey, that have been doing it for years, that have done it successfully, maybe some that have failed and are going at it again and that are successful. So they have this wealth of knowledge automatically. But there seems to be a transition where it makes sense to have an advisory board rather than showing up to ISA and being honest and open with your friends about your challenges. What is that pivot point where it makes more sense to have something structured and bring in trusted advisors and have people on call for helping you navigate whatever it is your business is going through right now?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a sign of maturity, frankly, when a founder realizes they don't have all the answers. And I think it's real maturity when you realize you don't have to have all the answers. You have to know where to find them, or know where to source those ideas and those better ideas and the people that come along with it. So I think an advisory board really makes sense for companies when the founder realizes they're going to need some help to get where they want to go, that the business has outgrown their personal capacity and it's bigger than them. And in franchising, I'm a big believer that the franchisor has a fiduciary obligation to the franchisees who buy into their brand to manage that brand responsibly and help support those franchisees to truly be successful at the unit level. So when a franchisor realizes they've made this mutual commitment to all of these franchisees, the pressure that can create is tremendous. And if it's not managed or channeled properly, it can be overwhelming. So putting a good leadership team in place is kind of step one, other people who can help get the work done. But a good advisory board comes alongside to help that founder make better decisions. And it creates the opportunity for accountability. It doesn't always create accountability, but it's more likely to happen if there's a board in place. So an advisory board is just that. They give advice. It's informal. It's flexible. These are not board of directors. That they're completely different structures. People say, "Oh, I'm on the board." Well, what kind of board? So a board of directors is a much larger, more formal fiduciary. You need documents, you need insurance. You're going to have much more structured. An advisory board can be very informal and loosely structured, and it can be changed real quickly and easily. So I like the advisory boards. I've launched and set up a lot of boards for franchisors. And I serve on some of those boards, and every once in a while I serve on another board that maybe I didn't create, but I come along and help fix it and make it more effective, right? But I think the advisory board makes sense when a founder realizes they need help, but maybe they can't afford a $200,000 salary. Maybe they don't want to give away a big chunk of equity right now. They're looking for a solution that can create value in the brand without giving up really any control or any equity whatsoever. An advisory board can come along, and if you're going to structure it properly, you got to set it up carefully, and you got to use it properly. But a well-developed and well-utilized advisory board creates a lot of value for the organization, for the founder, for the owners of that business. It creates confidence for the franchisees to realize that, hey, there's more people in here, hopefully some good, smart people who can help us help this brand. That creates confidence, which is always good in franchising. It deepens that relationship with those franchisees. And a good advisory board can really help move that brand to that next level and prepare them for whatever they're trying to grow into or scale into. I say a good advisory board is a good thing to have before you entertain private equity. And believe me, private equity is going to put a board in place. If you don't have one, they're going to put one in, and it's going to be their people first, depending on the deal or the transaction or the sponsor or however you structure your deal. But so I think having a board is a good thing. And the best time to have one is before you wish you had one, right? Sure. Before things go wrong and before you're really in trouble or you're really out of your league. But sometimes it's hard for founders to recognize that, but it's a low risk option. It's not expensive. I mean, it's not free. It's not cheap. I think you get what you pay for. But a good structured advisory board creates a recurring opportunity for consistent input from people you know and trust. So when I show up at IFA or any other franchise conference, I'm out there doing my thing, and I got a lot of friends, and I'm always meeting new people, and I just love to connect and share. But really, those conversations are very surface level rarely do they get, 1 or 2 degrees below, everything's fine. We're doing okay. Maybe you've got some challenge or issue. You're looking for help on one particular thing. But with a board, because of the format, if you use it properly, you're always questioning and reviewing, and I say pressure testing everything that's going on inside that organization, the leadership, the management, the performance, the accountability, the structure, all the way top to bottom, front to back, inside and out. So a real board can really add what I would say multidimensional value to an organization with very little risk.
Mhm.
But it's not something that just happens. You have to organize it and you have to utilize it carefully. But I think a good board can really make a big impact. And the other thing I've seen board work do when I'm doing my work as a board member, it takes the pressure from that founder or CEO and creates a more balanced approach. Because now you've got a board that can really be strategic, help you make better decisions and hold you accountable. The board can help with your leadership team and hold them accountable. You can blame the board for tough decisions that you got to make. I've done that where, tell them the board made you do it, which may or may not be accurate, right? Advisory boards don't vote. They don't have any shares necessarily, it's not required. I mean, depends on how you structure your incentives and things, but a board can serve a lot of interesting strategic value for the owners. I say the board, when I'm working at the board, I'm there as if I owned the company. What would I be worried about? What am I looking for? What am I thinking about? And I ask those questions that make people uncomfortable, but that's where they grow, right? And that's what a good board will do, is make you just a little bit uncomfortable so that your performance improves. And again, the confidence improves, and it improves across the whole organization, from the ownership to the leadership to the management to the franchisees. So I'm a big fan.
Oh, and it sounds like it's done wonders at a lot of the brands that you both advised, and for your mom and your business and your family business itself. I'm curious, you talked a lot about structure and the idea of accountability and cadence and power or not. I know, the answer here might be it depends, but I'm curious what an ideal structure or maybe an ideal starting structure is for a founder who's getting started with an advisory board to start dipping their toe in, and how to create that balance of not distraction, but getting the people. And I guess in the loosest terms, how to start thinking about putting one together.
Sure. Well, I'll just shameless plug here is I've written a monthly blog for 10 years. So there's a ton of stuff, and I write about board work a lot. So you can find that. It's not hard to find, and you can read all you want about it. But I would say a good starting point is, be careful with expectations. So setting expectations of what the board is and what the board isn't, what they do and what they don't do, and what their role is, what their function is, and how you want to structure that board. I usually say, people say, well, who should be on my board? I say, well, there's at least 3 people that immediately come to mind. One, first board member you want to pick is, I would say, a loyalist. Someone who's loyal to you. These are private companies, small business. Someone who's loyal to the owner. Maybe your spouse, maybe a relative, maybe a neighbor, a friend from school. Someone you know and trust, who's going to be watching out for your best interests. In the case something happens to you and you're not around, they're going to make sure that whatever it is you wanted to happen is more likely going to happen. So a loyalist is number one, and that's not always an obvious choice, but that's the first. The second, I like a good financial mind on the board, a banker, a CPA, someone with some financial aptitude, someone who can see the business through the numbers and help you through the what if. What if we do this? What if we do that? Well, what's the impact? And a lot of that financial, if you don't have a sophisticated CFO, most smaller businesses don't have that level of infrastructure. So a board can serve some of that. And then the third is someone who knows your business, someone who knows your industry. Maybe it's a retired competitor. You'd be surprised at the knowledge they're willing to share because they're done and they want to, and they know the business, they know the industry. So a loyalist, a financial person, and then someone who knows your business, but is obviously not a competitor, but someone who can relate to what you're doing. Maybe they have network or connections or certainly relationships surrounding whatever industry you're in, and not just franchising. Like I've worked in janitorial commercial cleaning. I work in remodeling, obviously hair salons, other boards and other industries. So people from those industries, not just the franchise industry, but whatever the category that you're actually in. And then from there, you can add other folks. I've had people who say, well, we're struggling with technology. Well, let's put the technology person on your board. Or someone says, I want to go international. Great. Let's put an international person with that experience on your board, and they can help. Or I want to get into the private equity world. Well, let's find someone who knows something about that or who's had that experience. So your board, an advisory board, can flex and change as the business and leadership has needs that change. So I think it's good to start with some core members and some structure and very clear expectations. The other thing is the agenda matters, the meeting agenda, the materials that you put out and when you put those out in advance. Like I like it a week in advance. If you send it to me the night before, there's no way I'm going to look at it. I just don't have the capacity. But if you send it to me a week in advance, I'll get a couple hours in to review and be totally prepared for that meeting. So there's some structural things and again, setting up those expectations. When a new board launches, one of the things I recommend is you have monthly board meetings for the first 3 months. So you have 1, 2, 3, every month for 3 months, because there's a learning curve for the board members. They maybe don't know your business or know your team or know your people. And if you start out quarterly, it'll take them all year to get an understanding of your business. So if you have 1, 2, 3 meetings right away, that ramps up that learning curve. And plus, you'll know if some of those board members really aren't a good fit, that'll show up. They'll either not available or not engaged. And you might say, I don't think this is going to work. And you move them out and you put somebody else in that seat. So 3 meetings right away, then go every other month for the next 3 meetings. So you put a little more space between them because now they're up the curve and they're working together and now you kind of know what to expect. And then you settle in on a quarterly cadence and I'd say at least once a year you want to meet in person. I like to show up at the brand conference. That's a lot of fun for me. I say, let's do the board meeting a couple days before or a day before or the day after if you're not already exhausted, but bringing your board members to your brand conference is a real opportunity because they get to see it and feel it and connect with your people and your vendors and your team and your franchisees. And the more I know, the better I can serve your business. So I love showing up at those conferences, even if I'm just a visitor and observer. I don't have any formal role. I'm not expected to do anything, but show up and ask questions. And
love that.
So you want to engage your board at an appropriate level. And again, from the beginning, a little steeper incline is good because you got to prove the board works and you got to get that board educated and acclimated to your business and your people and everything that's going on in there. Then really, it's a matter of the board only knows what you share. Unless you've got some board members like me who will ask tough questions, right, and make you uncomfortable. But that's the more I know, the better I can serve, right? So I say bring to your board not just what's going on and what your problems are, but bring them the things that you really don't know and the things you're really uncomfortable with. That's when you're really using a board at a high level. Because they will help you sort out what's important and what's not important. And they don't know everything, right? But we're smarter together, right? When the board has that collaborative engagement, that's when really breakthrough ideas come through. And then you can take your board through workshops. I've done the 10X workshop as a board for a brand which had a tremendous impact on that company. It was wonderful. I mean, it took a little bit of time, but was very valuable for that founder and those shareholders in that brand. So a wide range of things you can do with a board, but if you don't have one, you can't use it. So I'm a big fan. I get one, and if you don't know where to start, there's books, there's people, there's resources, all that.
Amazing. Well, I don't think we have enough time for any more questions, but you had a dovetail into the last one perfectly there. If people do have more questions, they want to reach out or have questions on their board, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, my name is John Francis. My nickname is Johnny Franchise, right? Someone gave me that nickname. So that's kind of my handle, my brand, johnnyfranchise.com. I'm all over the socials. I'm not hard to find. Hit my website. There's links and schedulers and whatever you call the message content. However, you can find me. I said, just call me, right? If I'm not talking to someone else, I usually answer the phone. I'm happy to share ideas and ask questions and try to point you in the right direction. If I can be a resource, that's great. If not, I'll try to help you. And otherwise I'll get out of the way. I don't really, need to do anything. I love to do what I'm doing. It's a privilege for me to help other people with their franchising, because when everybody gets it right, when the franchisor does their piece, the franchisee does their piece, and the supplier does their piece, everybody wins. And I don't know anything that creates more success than a well-run franchise system. So that's what I'm trying to do, is help whoever I can, wherever they are, try to help them get to that next level with their franchise.
I can confirm, John, that you've just been an open book and an honest operator, and even the advice you've given me is great. And for those who don't know, John's blog is fantastic. John, thanks so much for the time. Until next time.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.